The committee will come to order. Today's hearing examining new embassy construction, questioning are new administration policies putting Americans overseas in danger. The Committee on Oversight and Government Reform exists to secure two fundamental principles. First, Americans have a right to know that the money Washington takes from them is well spent. And second, Americans deserve an efficient, effective government that works for them. Our duty on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee is to protect these rights. Our solemn responsibility is to hold government accountable to taxpayers, because taxpayers have a right to know what they get from their government. It is our job to work tirelessly in partnership with citizen watchdogs to protect these rights and to deliver the facts to the American people and bring genuine reform to the Federal bureaucracy. This is our mission statement. Today, we are examining the results of a Department of State 2011 decision to transition from a successful program of standard embassy design, which stressed security, functionality, to a new, undefined, loosely defined design excellence program, which has led to untimely delays in construction as well as increased cost. These delays put American diplomats and their staff in an unnecessary risk. Keeping them safe should be our primary priority. In response to the 1998 East Africa embassy bombings, the State Department implemented sweeping reforms in the way it constructed new embassies and consulates overseas. Among these reforms are the development of a standard embassy design that could easily adapt for size and location, the use of design-built contract delivery method, the implementation of performance management and strategic planning principles. These reforms produced an impressive record of successful overseas facilities construction, leading to embassies and consulates being well-built, on time and on budget, and offering superior security. In 2001, the government was only building an average of one new embassy per year. One new embassy means 200 years to replace all our embassies and consulates. By comparison, in 2006, following the implementation of the new reforms, the State Department Bureau of Overseas Building Operations, known as OBO, opened an unprecedented 14 new facilities. That same year, the Independent Government Accountability Office, known as GAO, found that the construction time for embassy projects had been reduced from 69 months, basically 6 years nearly, to 36 months, 3 years. In addition to reducing the amount of time required to build new embassies, GAO also found that the majority of standard embassy design projects it reviewed ended up costing significantly less than State Department cost estimates. The embassy construction program with standard embassy design at its core went on to move a total of 32,000 overseas employees into secure facilities by 2013. Starting in 2011, however, the State Department decided that a working and efficient program wasn't good enough. And although they will report that they maintained these tools in their toolbox, they've gone to a program known internally as Design Excellence. State maintains that the new initiative will incorporate the successes of standard embassy design, while also allowing for more flexibility to adapt its buildings to unique environments. In reality, however, the committee has learned that under the current management, OBO has decided to transition away from standard embassy design program in favor of a unique, architecturally sophisticated and more expensive embassies. Embassies look better and cost more. Through this move, this may be visually attractive. The new design process does not prioritize security. It prioritizes appearance. The new standards view security and safety as something that must be designed around and disguised rather than the first priority. I'm now going to play a short video featuring architects that was produced by the State Department about the Design Excellence Program. Please play the clip.
And within that, we find different security.
Thing. Work with come good can
I'm sorry to have to say this, but were our diplomats in Benghazi murdered because their building felt hostile in its context and didn't welcome the population there? They were vulnerable because they were in a non-standard, non-secure building, a building in which the refuge point was not designed safely, and Chris Stevens died likely of asphyxiation as a result of renting an off-the-shelf facility by exception to the requirements for a consulate safety facilities. Did Americans die in the African embassy bombings because the buildings didn't do enough to have enough openness and balance of security? Are disguising security measures really a good strategy to deter terrorist attacks? In the post-September 11th world, is it disconcerting to hear State Department pushing these arguments? And the answer is yes. In May of 2013, an internal State Department panel on diplomatic security organization and management, which arose out of Benghazi's Accountability Review Board's recommendations, issued a final report. In the report, the panel, which was chaired by former Undersecretary for Management here today, Grant Green, raised concerns about Design Excellence Program. The panel found no evidence for a business case or cost-benefit analysis supporting Design Excellence Program. The panel also expressed concern that under Design Excellence, fewer facilities can be built over the same time frame, which could leave U.S. government personnel exposed to inadequate facilities for longer periods of time. Losing momentum in construction of new or more secured facilities on time and at a reasonable cost would leave U.S. government employees in harm's way and expose taxpayers to unnecessary fiscal risk. OBO received $2.65 billion in fiscal year 2014 for embassy security and construction and maintenance, a significant increase over prior years. But how many embassies you build is how many large a figure you divide into that amount. When the Department requested and Congress granted a budget increase, it was based on stated need to construct new, secure facilities, not to produce more architecturally pleasing ones. Today we are conducting oversight of the State Department's Design Excellence Program. Though we have made meaningful and very specific document requests to the State Department, to date the Department has not delivered a single document, and this is unprecedented. Today we are today here to examine whether OBO has proper management and program in place to preserve the tremendous gains made under the Standard Embassy Design Program in securing U.S. diplomats and their families overseas at a reasonable cost. In closing, you are not the people responsible, but people who are listening today and watching today at the State Department understand they have stonewalled our request. They have even used mail to disguise, ordinary mail to disguise and delay responses. And this is contemptible. This is serious oversight of the Congress over the very lives and safeties of State Department employees. This committee is reaching the end of its rope with State Department stalling. You stalled on Benghazi, and 2 years after the tragic death, we only learned that, in fact, State Department was complicit with the White House in attempting to disguise a false narrative as to how and why the consulate was attacked. You are not the messengers that will be shot, but understand you may very well be back again and again as the documents that were requested finally come in. For that, I am truly sorry that you may come back here again and again. But if we do not receive documents that were requested in plenty of time, then much of your testimony today will be a first round and not, in fact, the definitive oversight that we expected to have. With that, I recognize the Ranking Member for his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this very important hearing, and I thank you, all of our witnesses, for being with us today. The horrific bombings of our embassies in Kenya and Tanzania in 1998 were a watershed moment for our nation. Following those attacks, the State Department reported that 80% of its overseas facilities did not, I repeat, did not meet security standards. Congress authorized billions of dollars to expedite embassy construction around the world. As part of this effort, the State Department's Bureau of Overseas Building Operations launched the Standard Embassy Design Initiative to promote the use of standardized designs of small, medium, and large embassies. This program has been very successful in achieving its goals. Since the year 2000, the State Department has constructed 111 new buildings and more than 30,000 U.S. personnel, and moved more than 30,000 U.S. personnel into safer facilities. The program also has its limitations. The program, for example, it typically requires large parcels of land, which sometimes result in buildings being constructed further from urban centers. Critics contend that this impairs U.S. diplomatic efforts overseas and makes it harder for officials to conduct their work. As one commentator noted, the Standard Embassy Design Initiative was, quote, an expedient solution to an urgent problem, but one that narrowly defined an embassy as a protected workplace and overlooked its larger representational role, end of quote. So we commend the tremendous progress made under the Standard Embassy Design Initiative, but we must always ask whether we can do more. We must ask the question whether we can do better. On this committee in particular, we must ask how to make this program run even more efficiently and even more effectively. To me, there are three basic factors we must consider. 1, security. 2, cost. And 3, function. In 2011, the Department launched a new embassy construction effort called Design Excellence. As I understand it, this effort aims to provide the same or better security at the same or lower cost, while improving the ability of American officials overseas to do their jobs. This new program seeks to achieve these goals by being more flexible than the current program. For example, by incorporating more customized designs rather than standard designs, the Department may be able to build on smaller or irregular lots. This may allow more embassies to be located in urban centers to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of our missions. These more flexible designs also may reduce costs. They'll lower initial construction costs and lower long-term maintenance and operating costs. For example, the new U.S. Embassy in London, although not constructed entirely under this new design excellence concept, shares many of its principles. According to the State Department, this new facility will be more secure than the existing embassy. It will be more functional and effective for our diplomatic missions. It will be completed on time, and it will be built at no cost to the United States taxpayer. This entire project is being funded through the proceeds of sales from existing U.S. properties there. The challenge with this program, however, is the lack of data. No embassies have been constructed to date based entirely on this new concept. The new embassy in Mexico City will be the first facility constructed from start to finish under this initiative, but it will not be completed until 2019. And according to Mr. Green, who is testifying here today, the Department has not put together a comprehensive business case that analyzes the potential costs and benefits of this new program in detail. We all know that what can happen with the lack of adequate planning. Under the previous administration, the new embassy constructed in Iraq went wildly over budget, came in well after the deadline, and was plagued with corrupt contractors. It ended up costing the American taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars more than it should have. And that money could have been used to secure other U.S. facilities and American personnel throughout the world. So as we evaluate the merits and drawbacks of this new effort, we must keep one goal at the top of our list: the security of our diplomatic officials serving overseas. Mr. Chaffetz, who serves as the chairman of our National Security Subcommittee, has asked whether this new initiative to customize diplomatic facilities could delay their completion. In other words, if customizing is slower than using standard designs, does that keep our people in harm's way longer as they wait for new secure buildings? I believe that this is a legitimate question and a legitimate concern. I want to know from the Department what their answer is. Our diplomatic officials deserve the safest embassies in the world, and they also deserve facilities that help them conduct U.S. foreign policy in the most effective and efficient manner possible. I truly believe that every member of this panel feels the same way. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I anxiously look forward to the testimony of our witnesses, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Cummings. I'm pleased to recognize the Chair of the National.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Prior to that, can I ask unanimous consent to introduce into the record a number of items?
Without objections at this point, you want to go ahead and state your.
I would. I'd like to introduce into the record the GAO report on embassy construction dated January of 2001, another GAO report from November 2004 regarding embassy construction, an additional GAO report from June of 2006 about embassy construction, the July 2010 GAO report, new embassy compounds. I'd also like to enter into the record a letter that Chairman Issa and myself sent on June 23, 2014 to Secretary Kerry requesting a series of documents that we have not yet received. I'd also like to enter into the record the response from the State Department dated July 3rd, which we actually received on July 8th of this year. And then the final document is the U.S. Department of State Bureau of Overseas Building Operations fact sheet, CBS News, our modern U.S. embassies becoming too costly to build. They had issued a response to a couple news programs. I'd like to enter that fact sheet back into the record as well. And ask unanimous consent to do so.
Without objection, the request is agreed to. And now I'd like to recognize the gentleman from Utah for an opening statement.
Thank you, the Chairman. I want to be clear. This is the beginning of a series of hearings that I think are essential to figure out and get to the bottom of the truth of a situation that is thousands of Americans are facing with their mission and their service and overseas. The Bureau of Overseas Buildings Operations core mission is to place American officials located overseas into safe, secure facilities as fast as possible. I would note for the record that the State Department budget, overall State Department budget, since fiscal year 2008 has increased more than 58%, going from $17 billion to over $27 billion. And that security funding from fiscal year 2008 to fiscal year 2014 has increased more than 100%. Prior to 2011 and Design Excellence, the Bureau seemed to be fulfilling its core mission, constructing secure overseas facilities both quickly and effectively. Not only that, they were doing it on time and on budget. Yet in 2011, OBO decided to take this rare government success story and replace it. The new program focuses instead on constructing fancy buildings to enhance the U.S. reputation around the world. All the while, many Americans are still waiting for their new secure facilities. Hailed as design excellence, the Bureau has subscribed to a view that fancy buildings equals successful diplomacy, that officials serving overseas and those whom they serve care first and foremost about aesthetics, and that aesthetics alone can further U.S. diplomatic relations. Since the Bureau initiated a major overhaul of its overseas construction program 3 years ago, embassy construction has slowed significantly, while construction costs have skyrocketed to millions over initial price tags. Long-awaited facilities in less than secure cities have been delayed for years, while American officials overseas who devote their lives to furthering U.S. interest abroad must remain in unsecured, dated structures awaiting State to construct safer facilities. Earlier this year, I traveled to Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, where I saw firsthand the ill effects of the Bureau's new design initiative. There I saw an embassy construction project that was originally slated to cost $50 million. Yet this has ballooned to a price tag of more than $200 million, all in the name of aesthetics. During my short visit, there was an attempted carjacking of an embassy staffer. This event, along with my conversations with foreign service officials stationed at Port Moresby, allowed me to see firsthand that having a fancy building is not high on their list of concerns. No one told me, quote, "What we really need is a building that represents innovation, humanity, and openness," end quote, as design excellence purports. They wanted a facility that offered safety and security for themselves, their families, and many visitors. Why the Department allowing foreign service officials to remain in unsecured, dilapidated facilities at the price of aesthetics is beyond me. We had a chief of mission there who is trying to secure his people. They're in an old bank building. It is not secure. Those poor people, they work in an office. They have to have an armed guard take them from their living facilities to the embassy itself, a facility that by any standard is not properly secure. In a May 2013 internal State Department panel on diplomatic security organization and management, which was chaired by former Undersecretary for Management Grant Green, issued its final report. The panel found no evidence of a business case or cost-benefit analysis supporting design excellence. In short, the program has yet to produce results, but introduces significant risks to constructing facilities on time, on budget, while moving officials overseas into secure facilities. Despite requesting, and to my ranking member and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, we cannot do the work on either side of this aisle unless we get the documents and operate from the same set of facts. We issued a letter the third week of June, asking for a series of things in preparation for this meeting. I have been working with the State Department for months. They've known that I've been curious about this. I've traveled overseas. I've visited a number of facilities. Yet despite that, we have not received a single document. I got one page that said, "We will get this to you as soon as possible." And if you look at the document request, to have nothing coming into this hearing is inexcusable. How can you provide us nothing? We don't have documents that Mr. Lynch or Mr. Welch or myself or Mr. Wahlberg can look at. How can you do that to the Congress? It's a waste of time and money and effort. And we'll bring you back. We'll do it again. But you cannot come to the United States Congress when we ask you for these basic documents and provide us nothing. Our staff worked with you and said, if you have problems with, one or two or three of the documents, whatever, just give us on a rolling basis what you have. And we got nothing. And I think on both sides of the aisle, that's a fair criticism. I hope my colleagues will, on the other side of the aisle, also plead to help us with that.
But a gentleman yield just for 1 second.
Sure.
I agree that, and I'm hoping, Mr. Chaffetz, that the witnesses will provide us with reasons as to why we have not gotten what we need. You're absolutely right. In order to do oversight, we have to have documents, and so I yield back.
And I thank the gentleman. Let me give you an example. One of the documents we asked is this report on diplomatic security organization and management. It's on the Al Jazeera website, and yet our own State Department won't give it to us. So I printed it out on the Al Jazeera website. Why do I have to go to Al Jazeera to get the information that you have and that you're withholding from Congress?
Okay.
I'll yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Let me recognize the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Tierney. I'm sorry, Mr. Lynch.
All right, we all look
Mr.
alike.
Tierney is the ranking member. He's not here of the subcommittee, but Mr. Lynch is here. And you're given 5 minutes.
I'm sure Mr. Tierney would take offense.
I'm sure he would,
not.
too. You're much better looking.
But thank you, sir. I appreciate the gentleman's courtesy. Let me just say, to begin with, we really do need to have prompt, accurate response as an oversight committee regarding these matters. It helps no one to have the allegation of obstructionism cast back and forth here. So I think that some of the gentlemen from Utah's complaints are well-founded about the responsiveness of the State Department to our requests. So we need to do better, okay? And that's from everybody up here. This committee is coming upon too many instances where there's been a long delay in providing information. Things blow up, and then it looks like you're being less than honest and less than forthcoming, at least with respect to the conduct of this committee. I will say that, like the gentleman from Utah and many of the members on this committee, I've spent a lot of time at embassies in some of the tougher spots around the world, and we've had an ongoing debate about how to secure the personnel at our embassies, and it's a difficult problem, and I don't think there's any cookie-cutter approach to this, and I know that there was an earlier, before the more creative design initiative was adopted, we also had, during the 110th Congress, this was during the Bush administration, we conducted an extensive investigation into the reports of the rampant waste, fraud, and abuse surrounding the construction of the new embassy compound in Baghdad, Iraq. And I've spent many nights there. The old embassy, the new embassy, that was a huge expense. It's going to be very difficult to staff. It's got more staffing requirements than the White House, to be honest with you. I think it's 3,400 people as opposed to 1,700 at the White House. It's just it's just unreasonable to expect that that is suitable to our requirements in Baghdad. We've had situations in Yemen. I'm happy to hear that, and when I was there, we had reconstruction efforts and strengthening efforts there in Yemen with good cause. We had fruitful discussions up to a point with the Syrian Bashar al-Assad about relocating our embassy there in Damascus. We don't have it there anymore. It's not staffed, but we're going to have to get around to relocating that. It's far too vulnerable to car bombs. We're right on a main street. We've got to look at that again. And I do support having a more remote, not necessarily remote, but a little bit of a setback for our embassies in and around the world. So, and that goes for not only Damascus when we eventually get back in there, but also Beirut. But there's been a profound lack of oversight in the construction process. One of the things I used to do, I was a construction manager, and that's what my undergraduate degree is in. So I've had an opportunity to see how we're going about this. And there is, to put to put it bluntly, there is great room for improvement here in terms of how we are going about spending this money and as I said before, the sort of cookie-cutter way that we've tried to approach this in the past. I'll be very interested in your answers to a number of questions regarding some of these arrangements. I know that in the case of the Baghdad Embassy, we had $130 million plus in questionable charges by the first Kuwaiti corporation that was allegedly engaged in a $200,000 bribery and kickback scheme in order to obtain subcontracts. We've had flagrant oversight lapses on part of the State Department and that had been previously warned by the Defense Department Audit Agency. And it's just been a series of missteps on our part. And underlying all of this is just a new world out there in terms of the risk to our people in these embassies. Benghazi is one example, although that was not an embassy. Still, it shows us what can go wrong, and we have a real obligation here to reassess the defense protocols that we have at our embassies, and that obviously includes how we are building them and what kind of apron of security that we provide for these facilities. So we've got to get smart about this in a big hurry. We've got to be more effective with our architectural design, and we've got to be much more wise with the expenditure of taxpayer money in support of these efforts. We can't afford to fail. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
I thank the gentleman. I thank him for his important comments. And Mr. Lynch, I thank you for your being a willing traveler to tough places over the years. You and I have had the privilege of going to some of those places.
Thank you.
We now welcome our witnesses. Ms. Lydia Boniz is the Director of the Bureau of Overseas Building Operations at the United States Department of State, and again, OBO as it's known. Mr. Casey Jones is the Deputy Director of the Bureau of Overseas Buildings and Operations at the United States State Department. And the Honorable Grant S. Green, Jr. is the former Undersecretary for Management at the Department of State. Ladies and gentlemen, pursuant to the committee rules, would you please rise to take a sworn oath? And raise your right hands, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please be seated. Let the record reflect that all witnesses answered in the affirmative. In order to allow sufficient time for questionings and answers on both sides, I would ask that I'd let you know that your written statements are already part of the record, and so please use your 5 minutes either to read a portion of that or to other comments as you please. Ms. Moniz.
Thank you. Chairman Issa, Ranking
Oh, and I must tell you, these mics really want them closer to you, not further away in order to be heard. So if you'll pull it significantly closer, it will make it easier.
like this.
Thank you.
Chairman Issa, Ranking Member Cummings, and committee members, I appreciate the opportunity today to discuss the State Department's program to build safe and secure facilities for our U.S. government staff serving abroad. I'm Lydia Muniz, Director of the Bureau of Overseas Buildings Operations. I've been with OBO since 2009 and came to the Department with nearly 20 years of government and real estate development experience. The State Department is deeply committed to the safety and security of our personnel overseas. Every new construction project that OBO undertakes must and will meet the security and life safety standards required by law, by our colleagues in the Bureau of Diplomatic Security, and by OBO. Security is the cornerstone of our building program, and because we have an obligation to the American taxpayer to be efficient in constructing our facilities, we are committed to ensuring that we neither compromise the speed at which we can deliver safe facilities nor incur unjustified and unnecessary costs. OBO facilities serve as the overseas platform for U.S. diplomacy. They provide access to consular services, promote American commercial interests, ensure food and product safety with trading partners, and implement programs critical to our national security interests. Since Congress enacted the Secure Embassy Construction and Counterterrorism Act, or SECA, in 1999, OBO has, with the continued support of Congress, completed 76 new embassies and consulates, with 16 more under design and in construction. We have moved over 31,000 employees to more secure facilities, with plans to move another 14,000 within the next 5 years. After 10 years of a successful building program, we examined our work and instituted an initiative that deployed the lessons learned over the years. This includes how best to construct facilities that meet the requirements of our missions abroad, most critically safety and security, but also durability, efficiency, flexibility, proximity for personnel and visitors, and a platform that serves the needs and mission of America abroad. We know that security, safety, and excellence are mutually reinforcing, not mutually exclusive. The Standard Embassy Design, or SED, standardized facility requirements and the way in which they were met, and created a discipline within OBO to deliver those facilities. Using the Standard Embassy Design, OBO came to better understand the common requirements of missions, like consular sections and specialized office space. But we also learned that while embassies and consulates have a number of things in common, they also vary widely. Their missions in dense urban environments and in rural areas posts with as few as 3 staff to as many as 2,500. Some have consular sections with 1 window. Others have more than 100. So while the SED provided consistency, we learned that a standard design did not always permit OBO to meet the varied needs of the mission or to deploy taxpayers' dollars in the most cost-effective manner. We learned that we should take into account local conditions and materials in order to have buildings perform better in the long term and to consider not only first costs, but long-term operating costs. And we recognized that our facilities not only meet the functional requirements of our missions, they represent the United States to the rest of the world. Our embassies are the most America that many who live around the globe will ever see. At a time when it is increasingly important that we provide for the security of our citizens at home through diplomacy and engagement with people around the globe, embassies that convey U.S. values, culture, strength, and know-how can be instrumental in that effort. All of this can and must be done meeting all of the Department's security standards and without compromising on schedule or cost. We must protect our staff abroad, and using the lessons learned over the decades, we can design and build embassies and consulates that serve our mission and colleagues, are better value to the U.S. taxpayer, and make better use of scarce resources in the short and in the long term. I would like to thank Congress for their consistent support of OBO's building program, including in FY 2013 providing increased funding to help our program keep a pace of inflation. In these uncertain times, we know that our facilities must keep our staff safe and secure. The Excellence Initiative will ensure that, will meet the needs of our missions, and will provide the best value to the American taxpayer.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
Good morning, Chairman Issa, Ranking Member Cummings, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I am a Deputy Director in the Bureau of Overseas Buildings Operations at the U.S. Department of State and have served in this position since October of 2013. The safety and security of the individuals who work for the U.S. government agencies overseas and creating and maintaining safe and secure facilities in all parts of the world is critical to the Department. I know firsthand the reality of living in a high-threat environment as part of a foreign mission. As a child, I lived in Pakistan through periods of martial law and civil unrest. In Islamabad, we lived on the grounds of the embassy, returning to the United States just months before it was stormed in November 1979. This experience had a profound impact on me. Security has been OBO's top priority since the 1998 bombings of the American embassies in Dar es Salaam and Nairobi. For 10 years, OBO executed a successful building program utilizing a standard embassy design. This work is now being enhanced by our Excellence in Diplomatic Facilities initiative, which will build the next generation of safe and secure facilities. I want to assure you that the Excellence Initiative does not diminish the safety and security of new embassies. Every office within OBO, real estate, design, engineering, construction, facilities, cost, and security was involved in developing the initiative, as well as collaboration with other bureaus, including diplomatic security. Briefings on the proposed improvements were provided to the Department, Congress, and the industry at large. The Excellence Initiative is about constructing cost-effective buildings, buildings that meet all of the requirements for our missions, safety and security chief among them, but including function, durability, flexibility, and efficiency. DS and OBO work together throughout planning, design, construction, and day-to-day operations of diplomatic facilities. I also want to assure you that the Excellence Initiative does not lengthen the delivery time of new embassies and consulates. OBO uses two common delivery methods for its projects. Both methods have time, cost, design control, and risk implications. That must be evaluated. The choice of which to use depends on the unique conditions of the building project. Under Excellence, OBO will utilize whichever method is most cost-effective, most expedient, and reduces the most risk. Finally, I want to assure you that Excellence does not increase project budgets of new embassies and consulates. OBO establishes project budgets, whether for an Excellence project or a standard embassy design, that are based on scope, local conditions, and prior year cost information. OBO has a depth and breadth of data that allows us to be very accurate in setting project budgets for new, safe, and secure buildings. But OBO cannot anticipate every potential impact. Real-world events, unforeseen cost increases in materials, civil unrest, currency fluctuations, and natural disasters can affect our projects. We are also not immune to policy changes. If the U.S. government decides it's in the nation's best interest to significantly increase or decrease the size of a mission or change the functions located at a post, the cost of our projects are impacted, sometimes significantly. An example of this is the new embassy compound in Port Moresby. In 2011, OBO awarded a contract to build a standard lock-and-leave embassy. In spring 2013, with construction well underway, the U.S. government made two policy decisions that significantly changed the project. First, a Marine Guard detachment was added, and second, staff population was increased by almost 75%. A cost-benefit analysis conducted by OBO concluded that the additional requirements could not be accommodated in the existing contract without incurring an additional $24 million over the descoping scenario. As a result, OBO stopped the remaining work and will recompete a modified project with the additional requirements. This option utilizes what has already been built on site, provides the best value, and yields the best end product. Continuing with the contract as is would not have provided safer, more secure facilities any faster. As Deputy Director at OBO, I want to emphasize that I take the responsibility to provide safe and secure facilities very seriously, and that there has not been, nor will there be, a move away from that critical mission. Diplomatic facilities are an essential function of our national interests. The individuals who represent the U.S. deserve safe and secure workplaces, and as good stewards of taxpayer dollars, it is our goal to see that those resources are invested wisely. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Green.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm pleased to be here this morning to respond to your questions related to embassy security. My background, part of which has been mentioned, I served as Undersecretary of State for Management for 4 years under Colin Powell. I subsequently served as a commissioner on the Commission for Wartime Contracting in Iraq and Afghanistan, and most recently chaired the panel that's been talked about here, which looked at the management and the organization of diplomatic security. This panel grew out of the Accountability Review Board following Benghazi that was chaired by Admiral Mullen and Ambassador Pickering. As we on the panel progressed with our deliberations, we looked at one thing, and we looked at many things, but one thing we looked at was the relationship of diplomatic security to other bureaus and organizations, both within the State Department and across the government where appropriate. Obviously, OBO, a close partner of diplomatic security, was included in that. As we talked to many DS employees and others who are familiar and certainly concerned with security issues, it became evident that they had security concerns with certain aspects of design excellence. We can talk about the importance of security. The President includes it in his letter to all chiefs of mission. Secretary Kerry has stated publicly that that is his most important mission, is to protect the people working for this country overseas. But when we hear from people who are close to DS OBO operations and they have voiced concern, then we were concerned. And as a result, we came up with a number of observations and a recommendation. It wasn't to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It wasn't to say do away with this crazy scheme and go back to standard embassy design. All we said was, State Department, you need to take an in-depth look at the security implications of this program. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I conclude my opening remarks and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Moniz, I just want to go through briefly one embassy, not including the ones that were primarily here. On a bipartisan basis, with staff from both sides, I went to London and I looked at the facility there. And we understand that's an iconic facility, the justification for a glass curtain wall building and a stunning appearance and even a moat has a great deal to do with our relationship with our most close, one of our most and perhaps our most close ally. Is that correct?
Yes, I think that's accurate.
And it's not part of either standard design or design excellence. It has its own purpose.
That's accurate.
But let me ask, yeah, would you turn your mic on when you answer, please?
Yes, that's accurate.
But I have one question, which is, do you believe that it is a good policy for Congress to ever say you can spend all that you get from the sale of other buildings, not a penny more, and no encouragement to spend a penny less? And that's really a yes or no. Do you believe that is a good policy? Because that's what they're doing there.
I think that as you noted, London is unique.
I know, but I really want the yes or no because I want to get on with the rest of the time. The Congress made a decision and State Department is spending every penny, adjusting up or down based on how much money they have. They're spending every penny that they got from all the revenues that they did on there. They're not spending any more because they're prohibited by Congress, but they're not spending any less. And we watched as they're adding and subtracting to reach that. Do you believe that that is an appropriate way to design any building? Yes or no, please.
I can't answer yes or no. These are unique circumstances.
Ma'am, yes, you can. No, and my time's limited. Do you believe that that is appropriate, doing it that way? First of all, do you disagree that that's what they're doing? Is they're spending exactly what they got from the sales, yes or no?
They're spending marginally less. The budget has been fixed, and there should be additional income coming from the sales of the proceeds back to the U.S. government.
I wish that was so. That's not the report we got on a bipartisan basis less than 2 weeks ago. Okay, I'll consider that you're not going to answer the other question, yes or no, but I'll answer it for you. No, it is not appropriate to say spend all the money you can get. They could have spent $200 million less and we could have built 2 other embassies. If they needed $200 million more to do it right, we should have considered that and it should have been made in a request. That is not how the private sector builds corporate headquarters or anything else. I don't want to get into the details of that building because it's not a part of it here. Mr. Green, basic question that you found in your study. Standard embassy designs have a certain look, which can be modified quite a bit. But is it fair to say that what they look like, to a great extent, is like industrial, commercial office buildings all over America, what's commonly called Class B, or concrete tilt-up buildings that are made to look nice, but they're ultimately fairly industrial?
I don't think so. I think when when we adapt the facade of a building, the goal there was to fit it in with the culture, the country, to make it as unattractive as we possibly could. And in my time at the Department, I visited more than 100 of our posts overseas.
Well, how about Burkina Faso?
About which?
Burkina Faso.
They adapted the facade.
Can we put one of those up? I think it's important because, quite frankly, design excellence seems to be about pretty look. You see those two buildings? Now, the State Department has not given us any of the information for us to evaluate the cost per desk or anything else, but which makes it very hard to do some of the assessment. But your study shows us that they're not cost justifying. The building on the top is made with non-local materials that are only made in 3 places in the world, this concrete facade. It clearly is an architectural design rendering to a great extent, not necessarily all functional. It's not a standard build. It cost a lot of money, and it's in an area in which there are more security guards than there are embassy personnel at desk. It's a high-risk area. Is that justified versus a standard built, in your opinion? If I need 550 people to provide security for 400 embassy personnel, do I in fact have a place in which the priority should be on looking pretty for the population so that they can be happy with us?
Not in my opinion.
Security, if it takes 550 people to protect 400 people, is that a place in which there's any question about what the priority should be?
No, priority is got to be security. In the Department, there's always this argument, whether it be with embassy construction or anything else. We used to, or housing, for example, we used to have those who would say, we need to be out in the community. We need to live out in the community. There were others that say, I don't want to live out there because of the hazard. I want to be on a compound. If you pin people down, security is the most important to them.
Well, let me just ask one closing question, because I have picture after picture, cost after cost, and we're going to have some of these folks back here once the State Department delivers the actual arithmetic so that we can evaluate it. But, Mr. Green, I know that you were above the folks here, and so you oversaw people doing the jobs of Moniz and Jones. But from a construction standpoint, from what you were trying to achieve, during your tenure, weren't we essentially making a decision to cut out architectural fees and changes that made embassies dissimilar versus similar?
I don't know that we were trying to make embassies similar, but we were trying to stay within a fixed amount of money so we could build as many embassies as we could to get as many people out of harm's way as we could. If they weren't as beautiful as somebody might like, that wasn't the main factor. The main factor was get embassies built. As you mentioned, there were, after the Inman report, after the Beirut bombing, we had 120-some-odd embassies that were rated unsatisfactory. And what we wanted to do was get as many of those fixed as we could. And, you know, as I said, I've been to 100 of our posts. Are all of them beautiful? No, they're not beautiful. But I think, in fact, I opened Dar es Salaam and Nairobi after the bombing, when we opened new embassies there. And they're fine.
Well, I want to give you a chance to answer, Ms. Moniz, but I want to get two things into the record. First of all, the pretty building on the top is in the 19th most dangerous, highest priority area. So this is an embassy that needs to be built sooner rather than later, in which security is clearly one of our greatest concerns. Secondly, I want to mention that my trip to Britain was interesting in that, as the ambassador and key staff went through and explained to me how awful the embassy was and how desperately we need to replace it, he also, of course, reminded me that this rather ugly, dysfunctional building was designed by the man that designed Dulles Airport, that it was built during a time in which design excellence, gorgeous buildings, were in the modernist eye of the beholder, and we were building them all over the world, and that, in fact, design excellence is, in fact, inherently like a designer's suit. It ages more quickly than, if you will, the industrial look. But if you had any other answers, I want to make sure I gave you that opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I'd like to add, or what I'd like to go back to really when talking about this project is that, as my colleague Casey noted, we base our budgets on standard embassy design budgets, on the number of desks, on the local context, which has us taking into account distance to get materials. We fix that budget, and we work within that budget. So the building that you see that might be more attractive, might be more tailored to the missions in question.
Okay, well, when we have the numbers,
would cost no more.
Well, when we have the numbers, we can have that discussion. I would love to hear your answers today, but since the State Department has refused to comply with a lawful request for any data, even one shred of it, we only have, if you will, sort of the whistleblower side of it. We don't have your side. But I will say that to fly in concrete from Europe for the top building, to me, is a questionable item that I'm going to want to see why those materials were chosen over materials that could be provided more locally. Mr. Cummings?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As I'm sitting here, I want us to take a deep breath and focus on what you said, Mr. Green, security. When all is said and done, a lot of these buildings will be in existence when we're dead and gone. And this is our watch. We have a moment in time right now to get this right, not just for our present diplomatic corps, but for generations yet unborn. And I want us to stay focused, because I think we can kind of drift off and not zero in. And that's why I think when Mr. Chavis's comments and about the data that we've asked for is so important, so that we can try to figure this thing out using the best information that we have in the time that we have. And so with that backdrop, I want to go to you, Mr. Green. And let me start by, Congressman Chavis, who serves as the chairman of our National Security Subcommittee, has raised a legitimate question about whether this new Design Excellence Initiative to customize diplomatic facilities could delay their completion. Mr. Green, you raised a similar concern in your report, which said this, and I quote, "Despite schedule cost assurances from OBO, there is concern that fewer facilities," and you just said this a minute ago too, "embassies, consulates, can be built over the same time frame, leaving more personnel exposed in inadequate facilities for longer periods of time," end of quote. Mr. Green, can you elaborate briefly, and what are some of the challenges with customizing versus using standard designs? And you said a moment ago that you didn't say throw the baby out with the bathwater. You said we need to you said certain recommendations, and I assume that you were saying, look, we just want to be practical to get back to that security thing, cost and function, so that we can be effective and efficient in what we're doing. So could you comment, please, sir?
Sure. Yes, sir. The observations that we made, and this is in the report, are certainly not all inclusive. This wasn't 6 smart guys in the mess hall that dreamed these things up. These were based on comments we got from security experts who work with OBO on a daily basis. I would tell you, for one, if you can build a beautiful embassy under design excellence, and you can do it as fast, and it doesn't cost any more, I'm all for it. I don't care. I don't care what we build. But What I am concerned with, it's just not logical to the people we talk to, and frankly to me, that you can build under design excellence as quickly and as cost effectively as we did under standard embassy design. You know, to pull a design off the shelf and build it and adopt the facade in a way that is fitting with the country, as opposed to going through a design, bid, build with architects and builders. It just doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Now, if you can show me with facts and figures that it does, I'll salute and agree with you.
There's one thing that you did not mention, and I assume you meant to, function, too. You talked about security, number one.
Sure.
Cost and function. So you want them to make sure they function properly, too.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that, you know, standard embassy design was a living, breathing thing. I mean, there were reviews done constantly. And sure, was everything perfect? No. No, the ceiling's too high, we can't put the light bulbs in, or we don't have enough parking, or the medical facility's not large enough. And those challenges were addressed periodically, and standard embassy design was modified accordingly. Function is certainly important. And I think that the Director mentioned 100 consular windows versus 1. That should, and maybe that happened, but that should be worked out as you're planning the design in a certain country that says, you know, 5 consular windows aren't enough for us. And hopefully, within the budget, we could adopt that.
Now, Ms. Muniz, what's your response, and will the Design Excellence Program delay embassy construction?
My response is no, but I need to go into detail, which can sometimes lose folks, but if you would bear with me. First of all, we use 2 different methods to deliver projects at OBO. We use design build and we use design bid build. Sometimes we don't have a lot of advance notice. Sometimes we need to turn around and we need to go into Tripoli immediately, set up an embassy, and move quickly. But because our appropriation is regular, it allows us to do advance year planning very easily. So what we're able to do is we know in any given fiscal year that we're going to do these 5 embassies. We design before, but because we are going to get under the Excellence Initiative to 100% designs, when we award the contract, the duration from award to cutting the ribbon and letting people into that safe, secure facility is actually shorter, because we will only be doing construction. We will not be doing design and construction after the award of the project. If we don't have a lot of advance notice, I think that we really do need to go back to design build and re-examine the type of building that we would put in place. But I think what's great about this initiative and this new approach is that it will allow us not only to meet the same schedules, but in cases to improve on them.
Now, what do you have to say to that, Mr. Green?
Well, I'm not...
Your microphone, please.
I'm not an architect nor am I an engineer. And if OBO contends that they can build things as quickly, you know, I may or may not question it. All I'm saying is the folks that worked with OBO on a regular basis questioned it.
Now, Ms. Muniz, the new United States Embassy in Iraq was built during the previous administration, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Before the Department started the Design Excellence Program.
Yes, that's
that project was fraught with delays, cost overruns, contractor corruption. In fact, this committee found 7 years ago, back in 2007, that the project was delayed 16 months, and the cost to the United States taxpayer was $144 million more than originally projected. So the issue of delays and increased costs can occur regardless of whether the Department uses standard embassy design concept or design excellence concept. Would you all agree on that? Do you agree?
I would agree. Baghdad was a kind of a unique situation. Once it had been planned initially, then the Defense Department wanted to put more people in there, so we had to modify the size of it. And I'm sure there were many, many other things that, I want to be there. I want 15 desks instead of 3. It was a moving train, believe me.
Ms. Nunes?
I think that's accurate. In fairness, as my colleague, Mr. Jones, pointed out, we build in different environments. There are all kinds of things that our projects are subject to which can complicate delivery. The department, the country, can decide to change the staffing patterns significantly and require us to modify. War, shortages, natural disasters can impact those schedules. So while I haven't looked at the Iraq project in detail, I've looked forward since coming at OBO, I do think that in difficult environments, as folks who know construction firsthand, those can have a real impact. But I do think that having a dialogue with Congress, with our appropriators, our authorizers, and this committee on such changes so that people understand those changes, I think can be helpful.
Mr. Chairman, as I close, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter sent to the State Department on October 9, 2007 by the committee's previous Chairman Henry Waxman, describing in detail the many flaws with the construction of the U.S. Embassy in Iraq in 2007. And
without objection, so ordered. And if the gentleman will yield.
Of course.
I want to join with you. I was on the committee at that time. Chairman Waxman did a great job of exposing that our wartime construction of an embassy as Fortress USA, as a base for when we departed, and with vague ideas of what they wanted at the beginning and ever-changing, was the best example of a bad example of how to build an embassy. I think the ranking member has made a good point that that is exactly what we don't want to be doing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. If I could have the indulgence for 30 seconds to follow up on the ranking member. Mr. Green, I just want to have the public sort of understand something about the standard design. If we were looking, let's say, at a 737 aircraft, something most people have flown in that are listening, they started making them in the late 60s, early 70s, and they're very different than they are today. But it's a continuous design that at any given time, the 737 is a standard built. Would that be somewhat similar to how the evolution of standard built goes, is that what you build 20 years from now would be, the standard would change over time, but the idea is to effectively have a continuously improving product like a 737 Boeing aircraft that everyone kind of recognizes it, but it keeps getting better over time.
I think that's a fair analogy.
Okay, well, and Ms. Moniz, that's the same idea. We all understand this is, it's not a fixed design, but an evolution of a standard build. Thank you. Mr. Chaffetz.
I thank the Chairman, and thank you for holding this hearing. It is pivotal. Ms. Muniz, in response to a CBS morning news program and a CBS evening news program, State Department was able to put out its fact sheet. They did produce those documents, but again, no documents produced to the United States Congress. In this, you say, all facilities will be delivered on the same, if not shorter, schedules. There is no evidence to the contrary. Do you have any examples of a design excellence building that is coming in on time or I say shorter schedule than standard embassy design? And do you have any examples of any building that's been built for less than money, or less than the money that we would have spent under standard embassy design?
Thank you for that question. What I'd like to go over is that, as the committee knows, the process to
No. I'm sorry. I have 5 minutes, and I got like 100 questions. Do you have a single example of success as you've stated it?
Yes.
Which one?
There are early excellence initiative projects. There was one in 2011, one in 12. There are 3.
I need the names of these facilities.
We could submit that for the record, and I'll take a bit more time to go over those. All of those
Okay,
are on
when,
budget.
hold on. I'm sorry, but you've already taken up a minute and a half. You're going to give us the names of these buildings, and when will you give them to us?
2011.
No. When are you going to, you said you want to submit them for the record. When are you going to give them to the Congress? What are the names of these buildings?
I could give them to you now.
Go ahead.
I could leave it. 2011 is Vientiane. 2012 is Embabon. 2013, N'Djamena, Nouakchott, Paramaribo. Those are early excellence initiatives. The first projects that will be awarded under the full initiative and the new standards are in FY14. Those are typically awarded at the end of the fiscal year, and they are all on budget and on schedule, and we will provide additional data about those projects as soon as those projects are awarded.
Let's go to Port Moresby for a second, because I had a chance to go visit there in February. When was that originally slated to be completed?
In 2014.
May of 2014, correct?
Yes.
And now when is it slated to be completed?
In early 2018.
So they're having to stay in the same facility. It's exceptionally dangerous, correct?
The reason Port Moresby is on the vulnerability list and getting a new embassy is because it's dangerous.
When did you get the final determination that the Marines were going to be located at Port Moresby?
The embassy that is being built in Port Moresby was based on numbers that were provided in 2008. As the committee members know, the numbers and the program for embassies is not set by OBO. It's set by the policy side.
I'm asking you, when did you get notification that Marines would be located at Port Moresby?
We awarded a contract in 2011. 2 years into the construction of that project, we were notified that Marines would be going to Port Moresby and that a staff of 41 had increased by 31. Including the Marines, that's a doubling of the size of the embassy. There was no way to continue with the project in a way that allowed us to deploy our resources intelligently, that would have allowed diplomatic security to certify the building and to co-locate all of the staff. We made the modifications that were necessary based on real changes that reflected American priorities in Port Moresby.
I'm going to try again. When did you get the official notification that you were getting Marines?
2013.
Can you provide that to this body?
Yes.
And when will I get that?
The Department is part of that answer, so we will provide that as quickly as possible.
This is the challenge, Chairman. If it's so dangerous and they need Marines, why aren't they there now?
The deployment of Marines is not something which is within OBO's purview, so I would refer that question back to DS. We could get back to you on that.
Again, you got to get back to us on it. Tell me, what happened? So that cost was going to be what? Originally, under standard embassy design, it was going to be an expense of roughly $50 million was the projection, correct?
No, that's inaccurate. The $50 million is the construction contract only. The information that we provided to the committee and to the CBS reporter who reported on this is that the budget was $79 million.
And what's the budget now?
The budget is not yet reconfirmed. I think we're going to be close to $200 million.
Wait a second. It's not reconfirmed? What about this document here that I have that has initials on it? It says, will remain $211 million for this option.
We believe that the cost will be under that. We are at 35% design.
But that is what was signed off on.
That is not what was signed off on. That is not a final budget.
We will go through that in further detail. I'm past my time, and I've got a host of other questions, Chairman.
I thank the gentleman. We now go to the gentleman from Massachusetts, the other Mr. Tierney, Congressman Lynch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I appreciate this. And I know we're beating up on the State Department a little bit. So I do want to say, to be fair, that the State Department did turn around an immediate request from the Chairman last weekend to support a delegation to inspect the embassy in London. That request came in on a Friday. The CODEL left on a Sunday, and the meetings and briefings were lined up for Monday. Usually CODEL's congressional delegations are planned for weeks ahead, So the Department should be thanked, I think, for the effort in helping the committee do that inspection. But I would caution you and to your colleagues that have the authority to approve Oversight Committee CODELs for inspecting these various embassies, that we do need cooperation. We need cooperation right now in Iraq. And I know you have limited resources, but we have a responsibility here as the civilian part of this government to get in and make sure that our folks are safe. So we need cooperation there. We need cooperation in Yemen. We need cooperation in Afghanistan. And so we understand very well the trepidation that you have, but this is a necessary part of our job, and we need full cooperation from the State Department on doing oversight. It's not just your job. It's also our job. So we just want to amplify our need to get in and out of these countries as expeditiously as possible. And we apologize for any diversion of resources to make that happen. But if we're going to sign off on a budget, we need to know what the situation is on the ground. We owe that to the taxpayers and also to the personnel that are in these facilities. So enough of that. I do want to talk a little bit, Ms. Muniz, about the drawback. I understand, Mr. Chaffetz has an affinity for the standard design, but looking at it, it requires a pretty good parcel of land in order to set it down. This is the problem we had with Bashar al-Assad in Damascus. We're sort of downtown there. We're on the street, very exposed. We were trying at that point to try to get the set design configuration for the new embassy there, new location. So there was nothing downtown, so we end up further out. That exposes us, even though we would have sort of Mr. Chaffetz's idea of that set design with an apron of security there, we would have to be further out of town with a long commute for our people. Once they fly in, they'll be very much exposed in getting to the embassy. This is the same problem we've had in Afghanistan. The most dangerous drive, in recent years is when delegations fly in to Afghanistan, and then you've got to drive up that road through Massoud Circle out to the embassy. They tried to tip my car over there in that rotary there a while back. A bunch of people very upset about somebody flushing a Koran down the toilet or something like that, and the crowds just went wild. But so putting our people out in a remote location is not the safest result for our embassy either. Tell me the answer. How to configure this? Now, you haven't abandoned that whole set design, right? Is that still on the table for when the land is available?
Thank you for the question. Let me try to reply to it quickly. You make a great point. Part of the difficulty of the standard embassy design is that it was a largely horizontal solution, so that where land is abundant, where we could still be on that much property in close proximity to our colleagues, so that we're not required to travel back and forth, which has not only security but extensive cost implications. It made sense. But in a lot of the cities that we're required to build in now, not only is it not possible to find those 10 acres, if we were able to find it, it is extraordinarily expensive. The example of London, we are building on less than 5 acres, 4.9 acres. Property in London is very expensive. Yeah. It makes a huge difference to be able to be on a smaller plot of land while still meeting all the security requirements, including the legal requirement for a 100-foot setback. But so both cost and security, I think, play, but it also gives us a lot of flexibility in building in all of the locations that we need to build in where 10 acres may simply not be available.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, does a design excellence model give you that flexibility?
It absolutely gives us that flexibility.
Yeah. All right. I know. When I try to think about the different locations and the different demands, the different environments that our embassies have to operate in, it does give me pause to try to come up with a one-size-fits-all solution to that, which I think the set design more or less requires. And I do support your ability to have modifications on that, more towards the design excellence piece. But sometimes we do have what someone, a casual observer, might observe it as being far beyond what is necessary. So you have to caution people on the cost aspect of that as well. I've exhausted my time, and
Will the gentleman yield for a moment?
Sure, I would. Sure, I would.
I believe there are multiple examples of standard embassy design on less than 10 acres. And one of the concerns I have is we have multiple GAO reports. We have an Inspector General report, all confirming that these buildings, in general, there are some exceptions, but we're coming in under budget and faster. And
well, just reclaiming my time just for a minute. The Baghdad embassy, though, dear Lord, that was $750 million. That was $750 million.
And Baghdad is not a standard embassy design.
Well, it's a modified. It's a modified standard embassy design. That's what it started out as. I mean, we have more than 10 acres there. We've got, so we had the ideal situation. So all I'm saying is it's not just a question of one method versus the other. I think that, whatever allows us some flexibility to consider the situation on the ground would probably provide the best. And I don't disagree with the points you're raising. I don't. I just think that it is so varied, the landscape under which the OBO and the State Department have to operate. They need that flexibility. That's all I'm saying. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. We'll now recognize the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Walberg, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the panel for being here. And I just opened my statement having had the privilege to travel to a number of embassies and consulates in regions of great insecurity. My impression of our public servants that are in those positions was enhanced, increased, almost disbelief that some would take those positionings. So we do want to make sure that they're cared for appropriately. We want to make sure the taxpayers are cared for appropriately as well. And I would add my comments to those already requesting that you please convey to people who can get us documents that we've been requesting. It's so important. When I've been listening to questioning already and find disagreements on numbers, on size figures and things like that, simply because we don't have the information and we can't do the work. I don't expect any hard drive to break down. I hope not, before we get that information, but we really need that. In your testimonies, Ms. Muniz and Mr. Jones, you talk about the development of design excellence. You talk how working with them was a very participatory process within the State Department. Can you describe how the Bureau of Diplomatic Security participated in development of divine excellence? We know that works, but design excellence.
Your microphone, please.
I'm sorry. The foundation of—
If you can move that microphone up closer, thank you.
I'm sorry. The foundation of the Excellence Initiative, sort of our base going in statement was, we are not changing the security standards, period. I have been in discussions with my colleagues in diplomatic security at the highest levels and at the working level and have made that assurance. I think that that is what is most important to them, and they have every reason to insist that that still be the case.
Did they clear
Yes,
on design excellence?
They cleared on our process, yes, and they support the process.
Who cleared?
I would have to get back to you on the clearances, but again, how we put those buildings together is in the responsibilities of the Bureau of Overseas Buildings Operations. To the degree that we continue to build facilities that meet all of diplomatic security's concerns, that's what they need to sign off, in addition to understanding that we not add cost or add time to schedules in a way that would also jeopardize security. And we have committed to not doing that.
But they haven't signed off yet, or they have signed off?
We have the support at the highest levels of diplomatic security in moving forward with this. A formal sign-off within the Department was not in the process, but they have signed off on our documents describing the process and how we're going to go about it.
Could you get those documents to us? Could I give you that assignment?
Yes.
To get those documents to us?
I'd also like, if I could, a number of members have mentioned the document request. I would like to convey, both personally and professionally, that I take seriously the role of this committee and of other congressional committees. It was a vast request. We are working as quickly as we can to collect that information together, and we'll get information to the committee.
But again, even the information that was in Al Jazeera didn't come to us.
I understand.
And you know, that, I appreciate your emotion on that. I appreciate your promise, your intentions, but we really need the documents. Mr. Green, the panel on diplomatic security organization and management group which you chaired says in its final report that, and I quote, that it understands the desire to have embassies and consulates be more welcoming and to reflect the openness of American society, and that, I quote, OBO is convinced that design excellence has widespread support within the Department. However, the report also mentions that from a diplomatic security standpoint, there are questions raised by the changes underway in the embassy construction program. The question is, can you explain what those concerns are from a security perspective?
Sure. And we outline them in the report, and I leave that to the committee to read at your leisure. But there's another one that came up later, and it goes to an earlier discussion here about the flexibility that design excellence provides in real estate and smaller places. That is one of the areas that DS really objected to in our discussions with them, both urban sites and smaller areas. Are we going to just have more waivers for the 100-foot setback? I know the difficulty in transiting if you're out in the boondocks somewhere, but there's got to be some accommodation. If security, in fact, is our most important issue, then, let me quote from an OBO document here. It says, whenever possible, sites will be selected in urban areas, allowing U.S. embassies and consulates to contribute to the civic and urban fabric of those host cities. Special attention will be paid to the general ensemble of surrounding buildings, streets, and public spaces which the embassies and consulates will form a part. What DS doesn't want is something on the street that a car bomb can drive up to and blow a hole in the wall. So I agree with the flexibility. There are cost issues, as the Director has mentioned, but some way, as we recommended in our report, the Department has got to do an in-depth analysis of the security implications before you just start building downtown.
I appreciate that. My time has expired.
Yeah, I was going to say that gentleman's time has expired. I thank the gentleman. Now I recognize the gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Kelly, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The independent Benghazi Accountability Review Board made several recommendations to enhance embassy security, including the creation of a panel to evaluate the organization and management of the Bureau of Diplomatic Security. Mr. Green, you led this panel, which issued a report last year raising concerns with the Design Excellence Program. This report stated, and I quote, while the panel agrees that special consideration for posts in places like London and Paris are warranted, security concerns for many other posts deserve serious consideration. The report also found, and I quote, "no evidence of a business case or cost-benefit analysis supporting this initiative." Mr. Green, is that correct?
When we did the report, there was no evidence of any business case or cost-benefit analysis. That's correct.
And why is such a study worthwhile?
Why is the study that we did worthwhile?
Or why?
This was only one recommendation of 35. There were 34 other recommendations that dealt with DS management and operations and organization and training. So this was only one which came to light as we began to talk to DS people that expressed concern about security.
Okay. And has the Department responded to this finding? And
no, the Department has not responded to any of these recommendations. I've heard informally that they've accepted in part or in whole 30 or 30 of the 35, but I frankly was not expecting them to respond. This was a report that was asked for by the Undersecretary for Management based on the ARB recommendation. We did the report, we turned it in, and went home.
So you're saying there's no cost-benefit study on the new initiative?
Not that I know of.
Director, I gather the Department has not dismissed Mr. Green's panel and its finding as irrelevant. So what has the Department done in response to the report?
Typically, a cost-benefit analysis is done before we go into a scenario where there is additional cost to make sure that that additional cost is warranted. As I've explained and assured the committee, there is no additional cost under the Excellence Initiative. We're setting budgets based on standard embassy design budgets. If anything, we are hoping that costs will go down as we're able to look at longer-term operating costs and to make decisions that allow us to affect that. The recommendation was also that we ensure that we look at what the impact was on security. Again, as I've explained to the committee and to the members, there is no impact on security. We will meet all of the security standards. Two of those standards, as you know, are in law. That's setback and co-location. So as Mr. Green describes the concern about being on urban plots, we will always meet that setback that is required in law, regardless of being in a smaller plot. It's simply that the ability to have a building go up rather than be horizontal, to not have a warehouse in a place where we're able to get materials in real time and to build one would be wasteful, we're able to take those into consideration and build on smaller pieces of property.
Would my friend yield just for a second? Would you please remind us what the setback requirement is?
The setback requirement is 100 feet.
Mr. Green, any other comment about the Director's response?
No.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you and your committee for the work on the panel.
Will the gentlewoman yield for a moment?
Yes.
On the one hand, Ms. Muniz, you say you're confident that it is going to come under budget. At the same time, we don't have a cost-benefit analysis. That hasn't been done, correct?
I've not said under budget. I've said on budget.
You were hoping that it would come under budget,
no.
but
the Department sets budgets. OBO sets budgets based on number of desks and based on the program for a facility. We use historical data accumulated from the construction of the standard embassy design to set our budgets. We know
but
that
you have no completed design excellence building. In fact, you used as an example N'Djamena, which is in Chad, as a success story, correct? That was one of your examples. If we went to Chad right now and looked at N'Djamena, what would we see?
It's one of the early projects that
What would we see if we went to Chad? Used as an example of success, what would we see if we went to N'Djamena?
I'm not certain what we would see. I'm obviously not.
Do they even have a hole in the ground yet?
I don't have the status of the N'Djamena.
You used it. You came up with the example, and I'm telling you that it's not even scheduled to be completed until October of 2016. We're not even sure that there's a hole in the ground yet. And you're using that as a success story. Am I wrong?
I described the projects that were awarded using the excellence principles. To say that those projects are awarded is not the same thing as to say that those projects are completed.
Do you have any completed studies or any completed projects under the standard, under the Design Excellence Program?
As I explained, we do not. The first project that we awarded as a variation on the Excellence Initiative was in 2011. The first real projects that we will award, as I stated, are in 2014. That is this fiscal year.
So the success that you have is just the awards. It's not actually achieving. Time has expired. I appreciate the gentlewoman from Illinois yielding me time. We'll now recognize the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Bentivolio, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here today to testify. The Chairman earlier alluded to the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And I can tell you from experience, the sandbag bunker looks really good to a soldier under a mortar attack, but I'm sure that we don't want to build the embassies looking like a sandbag bunker. But I know we do have a need for curb appeal. But after going through these reports and talking to some other people outside of this hearing, I just have a real few simple questions. I want to know, do we have a final number for the Baghdad embassy? Cost?
I believe we do, but I don't have it at the top of my head.
I heard that the contractor made over $500 million profit. Did you hear the same thing? $500 million in profit?
Again, this was a project that was
one of the most expensive embassies
years ahead
ever
of
built.
my time under the Bush administration.
Well, you have access to those numbers?
Yes, and we can certainly
Great.
provide those.
And what did we say the London embassy is going to cost us?
The total project cost for London is near $1 billion. If
$1
you
billion? How many people are going to work in there?
If you exclude the property price, it is under $800 million. The cost to do a major rehabilitation and security upgrades of the existing chancery, which would have never met security standards, including 2 in law,
I understand the need for
$730 million.
I understand the need for $1 billion. I would probably have, well, no, we can't say that. We do need an embassy in London. But $1 billion seems like we should be looking at some alternatives. I know in places like Iraq we use Hasco barriers, concrete, prefabricated concrete barriers that are placed relatively quickly in times of danger. I have some questions in regards to costly, let's see, wrap-heavy reinforcement, standoff distance of 100 feet, I understand, steel structures with curtain walls, all kinds of things that, well, deal with security, but you're putting more emphasis, it seems, on curb appeal. And I just a few more questions. Can you give me a few reinforced concrete examples of how moving to this new design strategy enhances security?
So I think London is a great example, and I'd like to speak in that context.
$1 billion worth. Yes, you have
We sold the properties that were existing in London. This is a project that did not have to be done. For net zero for the taxpayer, we are able to 100% replace those facilities for $50 million more than it would have cost to do massive upgrades to the existing facilities that would have still left it vulnerable due to setback, no co-location, and not meeting other security examples. We
Would
were
it
able
hurt to
build a
be
brand
outside of London, just outside of London, where the cost is less expensive? $1 billion.
I would argue in London it would hurt to be outside of London.
Okay, do you have a uniform layout for all embassy facilities which could aid security personnel in training during emergencies? I mean, you have to go from one embassy to the next. Everything's different. The design plan's different. Everything seems to be tailored at expensive costs.
Our diplomatic security staff are incredibly skilled, and right now they deal with a wide variety of contexts and of buildings. I would also like to say that if we stayed with the standard embassy design, which basically had two separate bars of construction. It is less efficient. It is harder to get from one bar to the other than a cube. London is a good example of that. And to build more efficiently also saves dramatically in terms of cost.
$1 billion for an embassy, and that's efficient. I just have a real problem with that because having experienced in Iraq and Vietnam, I know we build the same bunkers, pretty much the same standard design, a few improvements here and there, but they suffice. I know we could do the same thing with a more modern building, use a standard format design, either going up or out. You could probably have 3 standard designs that would fit just about anywhere. Why do I know that? Because I have experience in that business. You know, we build our military vehicles pretty much the same way. They're compartmentized. We can walk or go into drive an Abrams tank and change the engine out in a matter of hours. Mr. Chairman, I have a real problem with billion-dollar designs and costs when contractors are making $500 million profit on some of our most expensive embassies. Thank you very much. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Now recognize the gentleman from Vermont, Mr. Welch, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. You've got a pretty hard job. It really is. But 2 things. One, Mr. Lynch indicated gratitude for your cooperation in turning around a Codell. Secondly, I know the chairman of the subcommittee sent some requests for information. It is helpful to the committee. It's a burden on you. But it really makes for better life all around if there can be as much cooperation as possible in a timely way. But I do want to acknowledge the hard work that you have to do. One question I have is how much, I mean, the costs are high. How much of the complications that you face day to day in making decisions about an embassy, wherever it may be, have to do with the enormous security requirements that now seem to be part of everything? And I'll ask you, Ms. Munoz.
I think the security requirements clearly significantly add to the expense, but I don't know that anybody in the State Department on this committee would call into question the need for those security measures, both operationally during building and the measures physically that are put in place. But it does, when you look at the average cost of an embassy as compared to an office building on the market, those costs are very different, but they are really driven by what are some of the safest facilities in the world.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Green, you know, one of the things that I find a little bit troubling is when I visit embassies, they're remote in many cases, and in difficult working circumstances, it seems, for some of the embassy personnel as a result of the security requirements. And is there some indication that there are some cases where too much security actually interferes with the ability of the embassy personnel to do their job effectively?
I would say generally no, but if you talk about access, for example, for employees, particularly non-U.S. employees who are held up going through various security checkpoints, possibly there is. But I think generally DS is not going to spend money to over-secure a place. If anything, we probably have some that are under-secured.
Okay. Well, that's helpful. And, Mr. Chairman, I am prepared to yield the balance of my time.
Would my colleague yield his time? Mr. Welch?
Yeah, I want to yield my time to Mr. Chaffetz.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead. If you want to do, go ahead.
All right. I yield my time to Mr. Connolly. Thank you.
I thank my friend. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. You know, this is not a theoretical discussion. Mr. Green, when you were in the Reagan administration, I was in the Senate, and I went to Beirut before the embassy bombing. No setback, right on the main thoroughfare, and I had a friend killed, Bill McIntyre, in that bombing embassy, and of course our embassy was bombed again in Beirut. to say nothing of the Marine barracks at the Beirut airport. Kenya, Tanzania, some of the loudest critics of the cost of security and securing our embassies, of course, are the first to talk about the lack of security in Benghazi. And it is a balance, but security, we've learned all too painfully, is a very important component in making decisions about fortifying setbacks and the like. Is that not true, Mr. Green?
It is the most important decision.
Now, let me ask, how do we balance, though, the need for accessibility, the need for visibility, the need for convenience in another country? We've got to forget, we cannot forget, it isn't just about us and our security and convenience. It's also about the population our embassy, consulate is serving. Lots of people want to get visas and do business and so forth. Help us understand a little bit, from your point of view, with your commission, how do we strike the right balance?
That's probably the toughest question that anyone here has asked today. I don't know that there is a magic bullet to do that, but you've got to manage risk, and people have different opinions of how you do that, whether security takes precedent or access takes precedent. I remember when I was still at the State Department, there was a big battle between those who, in the old USIA, who wanted more access for the local populace to go to the libraries. And then on the flip side of that were the security people that said, we can't afford to have a library hanging out there in some commercial building. So we haven't solved it. I think it's, you have to manage risk based on the situation, based on the threat, and if you need more security or less security, then that's what you do. I mean, we can adjust.
And I'll finally just add, based on what you just said, you can't just have a cookie-cutter approach because the situation is going to be different everywhere.
That's right.
I thank you. And Mr. Welch, thank you so much for your courtesy, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.